This video is sponsored by Pixel Empire. If you're interested in gaming and movie-themed posters, wall art, and more, check the link in the description below and make sure to use code ROBOCAST for 10% off your order. The dream of any up-and-coming indie game developer is to get lucky and have a successful game that does well with its audience. With such an oversaturated industry, it is no surprise that this doesn't happen very often, and a lot of good games will go under the radar and miss out on the chance to gain popularity. It's honestly a shame when stuff like this happens, and it irritates me to see stupid stuff like generic battle royale game number 7000 take off and become successful, while other indie games barely get any publicity. For example, I used to spend a lot of time playing a game called The Flame and the Flood, and it was a beautiful survival game that was super unique and was a lot of fun, but it didn't really take off to the full potential that it could have had. It was overtaken by a lot of these other games that really didn't deserve to be on top. But not all people fail at gaining publicity, and many indie games such as Unturned have seen massive success and have developed a super dedicated fanbase. One of the games that has done this is a game known as Cube World. Cube World is a true indie game, and it's actually only made by two people, Wolfram von Funk, known as Wale, and his wife, Sarah von Funk. They started working on the game as a passion project, and because of their love and passion for what they did and their drive to create an amazing game, they developed a cult following, and rather quickly. The game launched and sold tons of copies, while growing even larger in the process. Everything was looking amazing for the developers, and the growth would continue for quite a while. But in the midst of all this amazing stuff that was going on for them, the developers would randomly disappear, and in July of 2017, Wolfram posted his last tweet ever about the game. Since then, nothing has been heard from the developers, and everything related to Cube World has fallen silent. The forums were deleted, the game was removed from the website and is no longer for sale, and new players stopped coming to the game. But the crazy thing is that even after this long, there are still tons of active players, and posts are made every single day to the Cube World subreddit. So why would these developers allow this to happen when they had achieved what many people in gaming can only dream of doing? Why would they give up an opportunity to capitalize on something that had so much potential? Is there any hope for the future of Cube World? We're going to be talking about that and more in today's video, The Mystery of Cube World. As I said earlier, Cube World was developed by a group of two people. That's it. Nobody else helped whatsoever with the development of this game, only Wolfram von Funk and Sarah von Funk. Anyways, development began on Cube World in 2011, and it was a game that was inspired by Minecraft, and one that seemed to take many similarities from Minecraft. Looking at the game from the outside, it really did seem like it was a clone of Minecraft. But if you were to play the game, you would notice that it was actually much different, and the two couldn't really be compared. And that's something that would make Cube World special. The game was defined as a 3D voxel-based game with a focus on exploration and RPG elements, and it took inspiration from The Legend of Zelda, Secret of Mana, and World of Warcraft. As work began, Wale created a blog, a Twitter, and a YouTube channel to post updates to his progress on the game. The first post was posted on his blog on June 8th, 2011, and it was a post that was announcing and teasing Cube World. A video was posted on YouTube that I can't seem to find anymore, and the comments on the blog post were extremely positive and receptive. Just from this one set of screenshots, people were extremely hyped for the potential that the game had, and questions were already being asked about how they could download it. Blog posts continued, and more people began to tune into the progress of the game. Wale also made a Facebook page and some other social media, and this simple just for fun idea began to turn into a real game, and it looked like it was going to become something great. So if you've never played Cube World, here's the gist. After customizing your character, you spawn in a randomly generated world filled with dungeons and castles and all types of cool and unique places to explore. There were also a few classes and a lot of items that could be found and monsters that could be killed. The closest comparison I can think of is probably like Trove, but I still can't really use it as an accurate one because there's honestly nothing that can or ever will compare to what this game was. But the screenshots and blog posts and teasers that were being posted all the time created hype. And not just a little bit of hype, but an insane amount of it. People were spazzing out about this game and were literally going insane with every day that went by without releasing it. Every single day, Wale would get tons of emails, tweets, and comments asking about when the game would come out, and it was overwhelming for him. He literally went from a dude who had never been in the limelight to a guy who was being followed and watched by hundreds of thousands of people. Because of this, something needed to change, and the developer needed to capitalize on the hype that was everywhere. I mean, it would be a missed opportunity if he didn't take advantage of it, so he did. The game would end up being released in alpha on July 2nd, 2013, in order to raise more money to speed up development, and it definitely worked. After nearly 2 years of development, it finally released and sold extremely well. In fact, the game sold so well that Wolfram decided to temporarily suspend registration on the website because of the high load of the servers. Or at least that's what he thought, but as fans would later find out, somebody actually DDoSed him, so I guess that was kind of a pointless claim, but the fact is, it was still a super popular game. Directly after launch, YouTubers began uploading videos all over the place, and more people continued to buy the game. It was a snowball effect, and it took off drastically. But the weird thing about this situation was the way that Wale handled it. He never once tweeted about the game being live on launch day, and no blog posts were made announcing that it was even released. He basically released it for the people who actively watched for it, but he didn't make it known that it was available. I mean, I don't really understand the concept, but even without a big announcement or a flashy tweet, people still went crazy for the game that they had been hyped about for the previous few months. After the initial release, which was in the beginning of July, 2 small bug fixes came to the game. The first one came on July 5th, just 3 days after the release. This update was small, and it worked on fixing a few bugs that appeared when the game came out. The second update came out on July 23rd, 2013, and this one was a bit bigger, but it still only fixed bugs. Meanwhile, over on Twitter, Wale was super active right after the launch. I mean, for at least a couple of days anyways. There was a period of like 3 days where he would literally answer every single tweet that came at him, and he looked like he was becoming a pretty actively involved developer, and not just a guy who was working on a passion project. But that actually didn't last, and after a tweet on the 12th of July, nothing was heard about him until the middle of August. He just stopped tweeting for over a month, and his new dev blog wasn't very active, only putting some teasers every once in a while, talking about something new that was coming to the game. Going back to Twitter, players would see tweets from him and his wife every once in a while, most of which were simply teasing something that they were working on in the game. After a few months, people actually began to get concerned due to the lack of communication, and players began asking questions. The questions continued, and on the 20th of October 2013, Wale tweeted that players shouldn't be concerned and that work was still being done on the game, but that they were busy people and basically people just needed to chill. At this point, players were a little bit skeptical because they knew how these developers had a tendency to randomly disappear for long periods of time. But over the next few months, lots of screenshots would be posted online, and it would restore the hopes of many of the people who were questioning what was going on. In fact, a blog post was made in January of 2014, and it stated that they've been working on a huge quest system that would be added in the next update. That single word, update, really created some hype. It was 7 months since the previous update, and people were on the verge of leaving the game if they didn't already leave by this point. So as you can expect, it was pretty crazy. Videos were made, Reddit posts were exploding, and the hype that was there around launch was once again restored. Things were looking great for Cube World, at least for a little bit. After this tweet, for all of February, nothing was heard. March rolled around and still nothing. In April, there were a bunch of posts on the same day talking about how they're still working on it, and then once again, nothing until May. Now I don't know about you guys, but this is a weird way to act towards such a loyal and dedicated fan base that loves what you do. Like, I understand these developers were not planning on blowing up and becoming official game developers, and that they were only working on it as a passion project, but like seriously, these poor fans of this game were pretty much being neglected. I feel like the developers could have at least said something, and it would literally only take a few minutes to send a tweet. In May, more posts were made, and in June, a video was posted showing the system off. At this point, it should have been almost time for it to come out. But things actually became even worse, and Wale completely disappeared and wasn't heard from for over a year and a half. Not even lying, right before the update, he just disappeared and was gone for literally a year and a half. That's a long time to be gone. Nothing whatsoever was heard from him actually. No posts, no tweets, nothing. The game was still for sale on the website at this point, the website was still up, the community was still active for the most part, but the developers just vanished. People didn't know if they died, ran off with the money, or just forgot about the fans. Because of this, a lot of questions were raised, and a lot of people got mad that they paid money for a game that wasn't even ready to be a game. It was just a weird case of bad public relations. Like, who does that to a community who loves them with no explanation whatsoever? Everything declined from here until October of 2015 when another tweet was randomly posted, this time talking about new music that was being added to Cube World. And it doesn't make sense, but remember all of that hype I mentioned before? Yeah, multiply that by 10, and that's what happened after this tweet came out. I personally don't understand how people still had faith in the game at this point, but the situation goes to show how loyal these fans were. The people who doubted the game were roasted by the people who trusted in it, and faith was restored once again. And from this point on, everything went well. Update posts were constantly being put on Twitter every month or two, and the active fans still sat next to the developers ready for the third update to come out for the game. But it never came. The last update was still on July 23rd, 2013, and no new updates have come since then. So you may be wondering what happened to the quest and what happened to the music. And to answer that question, nobody really knows. In July of 2017, the tweets just stopped once again, and the game was removed from the website, no more blog posts were made, and everything was silenced. I mean, even to this day, nothing else has been heard from the developers, and it's been a year and a half once again. Looking at the whole timeline, this game has been in development for almost 8 years now, and there's still only been 2 minor bug fixes released as updates. The crazy thing is, however, that people are still holding on to the hope that this will become something amazing. But a lot of other people are doubtful and question why Wale would release the game for sale if he didn't plan on finishing it for another 5 or 6 years. Being neutral, I could honestly see both sides of this, but I really don't know which one I choose. I mean, I do agree that he shouldn't have released the game when he did, especially if it was going to take this long to update it, but at the same time, people were begging him to release it even if it wasn't ready, so it wasn't really his fault. I mean, maybe the devs are on the down low while they try to create a finished product, but there's really no way to tell. But you know something that's not on the down low? Pixel Empire. This website has been absolutely exploding over the past few months, and I'm happy to say that they've sponsored this video. Pixel Empire is a website that sells all types of awesome posters, phone cases, wall art, and more, all related to gaming and movies. They have really high quality stuff, and I actually stand behind what they sell. If you don't believe me, here's a piece of canvas that I actually have from the website, so I know their products are high quality. They actually have a newer set of posters that just came out known as the travel posters, and they also look really cool, and I may buy some for my dorm. If you guys are interested in purchasing anything, I'll put a link in the description below, but make sure to use code ROBOCAST to get 10% off your order. Also, one last thing is that they're hosting a giveaway just for my fans, so if you're interested in the new travel posters that I showed, click that link for a chance to win some of them for yourself. Anyways guys, that is going to be it for today's video, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Check out Pixel Empire, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.